With me today on the Agents to Owners podcast, I have Michael Cruz, an exciting young agency owner originally from Havana, Cuba. He's the owner of Foresight Insurance out of North Bethesda, Maryland, and he's recently launched a new virtual assistant company out of out of Colombia called On Hand VA. So I'm really excited to chop it up with Michael today. So Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm great. That's so funny. I wish I could start a business in Cuba. That is my beautiful country, but unfortunately, that's not possible. That's why I have to go explore and other
Yeah,
countries for that.
yeah, yeah. I'm excited to get in that. I know I've heard you on other podcasts talk about your background and being from Cuba, and so why don't you tell us about your background and how you got started in the insurance space?
Absolutely. No, thank you for asking me that because I feel like it's something that I need to talk about more.
Yeah,
Um, my mom and I came from Cuba in 2001. We actually have a very fascinating story where leaving Cuba is not easy. That you have
yeah,
to jump through a lot of hoops, figure out things to get out of there. But the way we got out of there, we actually went to Brazil, and from Brazil we flew here. So it was a
really,
whole journey that there was no guarantee that we're going to be able to come here. So sometimes I forget that, being that I left
yeah.
so young, I was 13 years old.
13.
So yeah.
I'd like to touch on that. Do you recall what was your mindset then? Did you not want to leave? You're 13 years old. You only know what you know when you're 13. Nervous, anxious. Do you remember how you kind of felt around that time?
Yeah, it was a lot of emotions because it was one of those things where my mom the night before would say, "Hey, pack your stuff. We're leaving tomorrow."
That's it.
That
So
was,
you,
you couldn't tell your neighbors and people because you could get in trouble. Like
yeah,
they could block you from leaving. They could sabotage you because they would feel like you're basically treason. That's what you're doing. So it was like a overnight thing. At that age, you have your friends, you have your life set up.
yeah,
So it was very difficult at first, but over time you start kind of getting used to it. But it was a very difficult, you know, period of my life that I feel like kind of I've submerged and I don't even think about sometimes.
yeah. It's a difficult period of your life. If being 13, 14, 15 years old, period. Much
Yeah.
less going through something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, let's pick it up from there. So you go through Brazil, you arrive in this country. Where did you first enter into the country here?
So I actually entered to Los Angeles and
Okay.
I came in December. So we spent Christmas over there with my family. And then we flew back to Maryland where, my uncle was living at the time. And that's where we, basically started living. And I've been here in Maryland ever since then.
Okay. Okay. Now what, you still have family in Cuba?
Yep. I have a lot of distant family and I also have my dad.
Okay. Okay. So you landed in Maryland. Did you continued on through school there? And so let's take us through there and how you found your way to the insurance space.
Yeah, I basically was going to a tech school to learn electronics, and I was working at Best Buy at the time. No, actually, I'm sorry, Circuit City at the time, and I got recruited. I was doing in sales. I was in the computer section, and got recruited into a multi-level marketing company to sell insurance.
Hmm.
So I saw the way to become rich in network marketing. So I did that for about 3 years and I made no money or little money, but it did help me grow a lot personally, because I had to learn sales, rejection. I was prospecting because, the whole model is to recruit people and try to
Yeah.
sell through those people. So I did that for about 3 years. So that's kind of how I got introduced to the industry. But then, as you work in that industry, you realize, hey, this might not be the best fit for me.
Yeah. So then you moved into, because you've held a couple different insurance positions, correct? Before you found yourself into owning your independent agency.
Right. So I worked there for 3 years and then I worked at Mass Mutual for about a year selling insurance. I was really young, so I just really didn't have the network to do that. I didn't do really well. But then all this time, I I made a decision one day because I just wasn't doing well, that I need to find something else. So
Yeah.
I was in between going the banking route or going the PNC route. And I had connected with the Liberty Mutual sales manager many years ago in networking, and we've always kind of kept in touch. And he's always tried to recruit me. Hey, man, when are you going to come to work at Liberty? And finally, I gave in, and that's really when I started doing well financially, because at Liberty they had a really good training system. Their training was amazing in terms of like learning how to cultivate relationships, how to make sales. So that's where I really got introduced to the PNC industry, and it was a lot easier for me to achieve success there. And I did that for about 3.5 years.
Okay. So then what led to, I don't know if this is going to be, this is where I want to be. I want to start my own. What kind of led to that?
Man, I think it's a combination of things. I think you get frustrated because the mentality is a little different in corporate.
Yeah.
Like they
Yeah.
don't rock the boat, don't come up with anything new. Just make your calls, put your head down, do what you got to do. And I don't know. I wasn't happy with that. But I was naive thinking that I can just go and start my own agency. And I saw a lot of my peers actually branch out. At the time, Erie had a kind of like a business plan to recruit Liberty agents. So they recruited a lot of Liberty
Okay.
agents. So I basically went that route because a lot of my peers did really well opening their own Erie agency. So I approached Erie, and they had a really good scratch program, which I
Yeah.
think they still do.
Yeah.
And that process was extremely difficult. Like they don't appoint anybody because they're upfronting a lot of money. They're
Yep.
really careful who they on board. Um, but thanks to them, I was able to open my own agency in July 2016, even though I had created
Oh,
my entity in 2015.
okay.
It just took that long to get appointed and get going. And honestly, thanks to that, I was able to get my own office. I was able to lease an office. I was able to hire my first employee. So really, thanks to Erie's Scratch agency program, that's how I was able to, start my own agency.
When did you start obtaining other contracts? And what did that look like? Did you just go direct and contact, Progressive or whoever it was, or
Yeah, I was able to get Progressive before Erie. I was even considering going the Smart Choice route because Erie's appointment process was taking so long, and
Mhm.
I was using my savings, and I'm like, I quit Liberty too soon. That was one mistake that I made.
Mm.
I should have stayed there until Erie said, "Hey, we're ready to appoint you." Um, so I already had a Progressive appointment, and then AIC, which is one of our regional carriers here, they do only auto, commercial auto, and motorcycles. They told me, when you got your Erie contract, we're gonna be able to appoint you. So we'll wait for Erie to appoint you. So they almost like waited for Erie to do the due diligence
Correct. Yeah.
before they hire me. And then I was able to get other appointments like Safeco, for example, because the territory manager used to be a Liberty Mutual rep. And she took a huge risk on me because
Mhm.
other carriers, when you tell them Erie, they're like, run. They don't want to deal with Erie agents because Erie truly earns their business. They're a really solid company. But I was thankful that she gave me that appointment because honestly, Safeco now is my number two carrier, and I don't know where we would be without them.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about, okay, so that's 2016. And from the outside looking in, it looks like you've kind of grown your agency team relatively quickly. So talk about kind of the growth of your insurance business.
Yeah. So from the beginning, I've interviewed a lot of people, and I've observed a lot of my fellow agency owners and my own family also, like having a business. And I just didn't want to be the business. I feel like a lot of people, a lot of small businesses, they are the business. The
Yeah.
business does not operate without them. And I experienced this with my own, you know, my fiance's stepfather, where he had a business, and he just, he was the business. Like if he wasn't there, he didn't produce. Um, I didn't want to do that. I
Yeah.
really wanted to build a business that gave me freedom, gave me work-life balance. I really wanted to be a true business owner.
Yeah.
So from
Wow.
the beginning, I really got fortunate. Is timing is very important in a lot of things in life. It's not just working hard. I think it's a combination of being fortunate and timing. And I got introduced to a gentleman called Joe Hagan. He used to be the coach for Erie agents. So he used to have an agency management program. So my CRM, I mean, my management company, Xanatech, they have a software called IMS4. They used to hold these workshops and they used to bring Joe in. So I met him in that workshop and I signed up for his course, Freedom Through Systems. And then I eventually like hired him as a coach. And thanks to him, he kind of got me on that
Mm.
path of like building a true system, the whole E-Myth concept
Yeah.
of, stop
Yeah.
being the technician. And that's where my path started. And honestly, it's been a very difficult process because it's really hard to hire people and then pay them a good wage and
Yeah.
then make some money after that. So it's been a very difficult, path.
Well, you almost can't. I mean, and that's why, when people say don't expect to take home, any salary for the first couple of years if you go the route that you went. Why do you think that you had, the foresight, no pun intended, to do to do something like that? Because I mean, I love it, and that's the way most of us should think. And really, that's that's kind of what this podcast is based on, is how do we become better business owners and not technicians? Most of us come in like myself. I was said many times, I was a farmer's agent. So when you go, the captive route, that's what you are. You're an agent, or you're that technician, you're
Yeah.
the solopreneur, and you have to figure out how to work yourself out of that. You came from the other side to say, I want to own a business. My business is going to be insurance, but I want to be the business owner. So I'm going to take those, steps to do that, which means hiring people. Basically, how soon did you hire someone?
Right away.
You
I
did?
had a friend of mine, that I say, hey, you want to work with me? He was working at Sherwin-Williams at the time. And it was just very informal. And he was my first employee. But I'm a personal development junkie since I started,
Yeah.
in the insurance industry. I read a lot of books. I've been to a lot of courses, and you kind of like soak in all this information. So you kind of program your brain like this is the way to do it.
Yeah.
So I convinced myself early on that's the way that I wanted to do it. It hasn't always been successful, but from the beginning, and working with Joe Hagan, he taught me, hey, right now you're doing everything, you're wearing many hats, but I need you to realize when you're doing a quote, for example, let's say the quote intake, that's one hat. The actual quoting is another hat. The
Mm.
actual presentation, that's another hat. So even though you're doing all these different roles, eventually you're going to be able to hire people and have people fill those roles. But you need to understand that, you need to compartmentalize what you're doing so that you can delegate. And that really helped me start thinking differently in terms of my agency.
Yeah. That's huge. I mean, that's, again, many of us have to figure this out 10 years in. You were attacking that right from the beginning. I love it. So talk about the growth. What does your team, your insurance team, look like now?
Yeah. So right now we have two licensed CSRs, two licensed sales reps, and then four VAs. So that's kind of our
Mhm.
makeup. I used to have a commercial producer for about 2.5 years, and that's a whole nother rabbit hole that we can go to
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah.
But you know that did unfortunately didn't work out. So, but the other two personalized producers have done really well for me, and I'm really thankful for that.
Yeah. So I've heard you talk about other podcasts a little bit about your sales process, and I think it's very unique and smart. And so yeah, why don't basically how you will pre-qualify your prospects.
Yeah. So, when you start this business, you need to make money. So you're quoting everything. Hey, let me just give you a quote. Let me give you a quote. And that's kind of how you go to lenders and how you promote it in social media. And, I really, in the last year or so, have changed my mindset from like a quote everything to really just pre qualifying prospects, like you said. So now when we're getting a quote, it's almost like I'm hesitant before I quote it. Like, I need to understand, why are you shopping? Is it
Yeah.
price? Is it you're not happy with the service, the claims? We know most of the times it's price, but
Yeah.
there are other things why people are
Yeah.
shopping. And the National Alliance selling program, Sales Dynamics, also helped me kind of change that mindset. So we try to, pre-qualify prospects by asking those questions, up front. And then we also explain the process, because what I found when I listen to calls, and when I experience calls on my own, when you go through the process, people think, oh, I'm going to get a quote right now, just like Geico.
Yeah.
So what I try to do with my scripting is basically answering all your objections up front and walking you through the process to make sure that, hey, does this make sense? Do you want to do business with me? And the experience has been a lot better that way, and when we've kind of like been lazy and not gone through the process, sometimes that's where the customer gets irritated, because it wasn't really clearly communicated up front what the process is.
Yeah, and it's a long process, right? I mean, and it's it's not terribly long. How much pushback do you get from customers, and what are your, how do you handle those objections? Because, I think what we'll see is that sometimes people think everybody wants this Amazon experience, right? So do I.
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes people call, and to your point, they either think they're going to get a quote right there on the phone, or that it's going to happen relatively quickly, and that I'm going to give you 2 pieces of information and I want you to put a quote together.
Yeah.
I mean, people have become so impatient.
I've struggled with this, but I've kind of, the conclusion that I've come up is that, not everybody's your customer,
Yeah.
and you really have to understand that those customers that I want to quote in 15 minutes, those are good Geico customers. Not that they're bad customers, but they're not the ideal customer for us.
Yeah.
So the ideal customer for us is someone that's willing to invest time in understanding what their policy covers and what their options are. Because by the time you have a claim, it's too late to go through this process. So not everybody is at that stage. Like a lot of people, like if you're young and you're single and you have one car, like you don't care about insurance sometimes. But if you just bought your house and you have
Yeah.
kids and you have a family, hey, you know what? Let me figure out, like, what does my policy actually cover? So, you really focus on that target market that really wants to take their time and understand, how to protect their assets. Now they're building assets. So we don't get a lot of pushback, to be honest. And
Okay.
and the people that push back are usually not, good prospects
Yeah.
that we want to work with.
Yeah. How was the staff buy-in when you transitioned to, this longer field underwriting?
Tough, man.
Yeah.
Any process you implement that's new, the
Yeah.
staff fights back.
Yes.
There's nothing easy. Like, this is the biggest challenge as a business owner. It's the most rewarding, but it's also the biggest challenge, is dealing with people. Um, you know, it has taken time. It takes time. So what I tell,
Yeah.
What I realize is that everything takes time. You have to, whenever you implement something, you have to train it, you have to test it, you have to monitor it, and it takes time for the team to understand that, but the funny thing is, because I kind of listen to random calls, and I just recently had an experience with one of my sales reps where they got lazy and they didn't, go through the process and explain what our process is. And of course, the person got agitated when they started like asking all these different pre-qualifying questions. And I had to take over the call, because that's how bad it was, that
Mm,
I had to say, unfortunately, ma'am, like, I'm not able to help you because you're being rude and you're being uncooperative with
nice.
my staff. And she was like, well, can I just get a quote? I'm like, unfortunately, no, because we can't
Mm,
help you if you don't allow us to help you,
yeah.
so but the sales rep was a little bit upset with me at the beginning, because after that call, I called her and I said, hey, this was a great reason why we have the process that we have. We're not just making up stuff. Like, we implement, test, and make sure that it works, before, we ask you guys to do it. And a week later, she calls me, we kind of have a random conversation, and she was like, you know what, you were right. Like, I should have gone through the process of explaining, kind of presenting our process and explaining what's going to happen. And instead of just, asking questions. And you'll realize this, if you want to do some secret shopping, call randomly agencies and ask for a quote, and they just start gathering information. All right, what's your name? What's your date of birth?
Yeah.
You have no idea what's going to happen in that process, and they just start gathering information. It's just not a good experience.
Yeah. Well, I've heard you speak before about also setting expectations, right? during that call, which is what you have to do. I think if you start with setting the expectations, this is, what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you some of these questions, and I want to find out why you're looking around. I can better help you then. And then we're going to, put this information together, find the best policy option for you, and get back anytime. And that helps with anything is setting the expectations up front.
Correct. I mean, what's the benefit of dealing with us versus going to Geico? Yeah, you're not going to get a quote in 15 minutes, but guess what? You're going to get a quote within a day, but we are going to shop with multiple companies. We're going to, dive deeper and understand your situation. So you're going to get a much better comprehensive experience than just setting up your policy super quick. So you're sacrificing the convenience for getting quality and a better service, and better protection. So it has taken me a long time to really accept that. But now, like, I'm at a stage in my business that you see it, like the right customers are willing to wait, for the better service, the better protection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think once you set that expectation up front, then they might settle them down a little bit. Okay, cool. Then this guy sounds like a professional and is looking out for my best interest. You've been, so you've had your agency for, 6+ years, and basically you've been a boss that entire time, where most of us, work for ourselves. Talk about what that evolution of you being the owner has been like.
Oh man, I hate it when people call me boss. Oh, I just, I've matured. I've come to terms with that reality that I am a boss. I do create jobs, and and it's a huge responsibility. So you have to come from that mindset that if you're the right leader for your system, for your agency, for your business, you're going to help your customers, you're going to help your agents. So I'm really comfortable with that decision, and I'm really glad I went that route. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to be my own boss, and I didn't know this at first, but I've come to learn it over time, is that I wanted to have the speed. If I wanted something fixed, I wanted to fix it. I didn't want to ask for permission. I don't want to go up the corporate ladder. I'm really impatient. I'm not the best employee. But being a boss allows me to take ownership and responsibility. And if something doesn't work, I can't blame the company or the leadership like it's my fault. And that is really hard. A hard reality to deal with.
Yeah. So, some of those things of being a captive, we kind of take for granted that are we don't realize that are just provided for us. Management system, maybe some support, some things. When we get out on our own, we realize that we make every single decision that happens for this space, and that's a challenge.
I think if I could understand that when I was an employee, I think I would have taken more advantage of the resources that I had, because you're absolutely right. I mean, we take it for granted sometimes as employees that everything is there. All you have to do is put in some hard work. And that's kind of what I try to instill in my agents and say, hey, look, I'm doing all this foundation work for you to grow and succeed. So don't take it for granted.
Yeah. That's something I try to explain to my team of, as I went a different route, than you did, as many as did. I kind of grew, and I grew, with the team while I was still producing, and I got to be so overwhelmed that I was both working in the business and trying to work on the business. And then working on the business is what suffered, because it's hard to get out of those weeds of working in the business. And so as I've, gotten myself out of the businesses, I've had to, be transparent. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make your jobs better. I'm trying to make what we do a more streamlined, better process. And I think for many of us out there, I knew that as long as I was still working in the business, we weren't going to grow. We weren't going to grow, and we weren't going to get better, or it's going to take way longer.
Yeah. And to kind of piggyback on that, I would say, and I always like to give him a plug because he has changed my agency. The second person that really has influenced me a lot is Billy Williams, Dr. Billy Williams, because when you sign up for his program and you got to go through that process, one of the first things that he teaches you is calendar blocking.
Hmm.
So if you can have the discipline to calendar block, maybe it's 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour after the phones stop ringing, or maybe it's a Saturday or a Sunday, that's when you can work calmly on your business. But the problem is, a lot of us just lack that discipline and
Yeah.
structure to be able to work on our business. We're so exhausted and mentally drained from the everyday grind that we just don't build our business. We just kind of just keep doing the thing, and we're just continue being technicians.
Yeah, and the key, which you hit on a couple times, is discipline. You have, if you're going to set aside, 10 to noon, that's your time.
Correct.
Door, if the door has to be shut, whatever it is, but I have to take this time, and everybody has to know this is my time to do this sort of thing.
What I try to do is either really early in the morning, like before anybody is going to call me, or late at night, because I found like during business hours it can get difficult. There's
Yeah,
always a fire, there's always something that's
yeah,
taking priority. So if you have the time to do that, I think that's what has worked for me.
yeah, yeah. Tell me about some of what your biggest challenges have been as an agency owner.
I think like all of us,
Yeah,
you start your agency and you don't have the skills and the tools that you need. You learn that, hey, you got to be good at marketing, you got to be good at finances, you got to be good at management. So that has been for me just being patient with myself and say, hey, we're going to tackle one thing at a time. You're going to learn as you go.
yeah,
It because I think I will say this. I think the biggest realization also is that if you're not organized and you're not disciplined, you can be so busy in our industry and not accomplish much.
100%, 100%. You can leave in the day and say, I don't know, I was swamped all day. I have no idea what I did.
Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So how long have you worked with Dr. Billy Williams?
I've been on and off on his self-paced program for about 2 years, but I think this year I took a little bit more seriously. Just kind of following the endorsement process, uploading my templates. Right now, I'm building out my renewal process. We had a call, and he basically just told me what was in his process. So it was very nice of him to have that patience and walk me through. Um, but the reason I always shout him out because I go to these agency groups, Facebook pages, and the questions they ask, I'm like, oh, the answer is there. The answer
Yeah.
is in Billy Williams' program. Like he already has everything mapped out for you. He has all the core
Yes.
processes, all your disciplines that you need to do. Just go in there and pick whatever process you want to work on, and it's already there for you. You don't have to go and try to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's there. 100. Yeah. It is. The roadmap is there. I mean, he's thought of everything.
Yeah, I mean, in our industry, I'm so thankful for people like that because I feel like, unfortunately, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of things that just haven't been tested.
Mhm.
And he comes from a place of like his stuff not only makes sense, but he's tested it, and I
Yeah.
love that. We need more people like that.
Yeah. Let's pivot to the to your new VA company, which is really just getting going. So let's talk about what led to the creation of this company and where you're at with it now.
No, I appreciate you actually giving me the platform to talk about that because I actually started last year,
Okay.
and I kind of went quiet for a few months, and I want to explain why. I started it because I had started using VAs for my own agency. I started working with different companies, and I kind of saw like some companies were doing something really well, other companies were lacking other things, and I just saw like it was an opportunity, and there was going to be enough business for everybody. There was going to be enough need to have
Yeah.
multiple competitors in this space. But I started the business just like the scratch agency, and I quickly realized, man, this is so difficult, and this takes so much work. When we started first, like we were only hiring people remote. So I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm going to keep my overhead really low. I'm going to hire people to work from home. So the margin was really nice. But what I quickly found is that training people remote is so difficult.
Yeah.
The learning curve is so slow. It's really frustrating. It's just very time consuming. And also I achieve the level of productivity and professionalism that I wanted out of the VAs I had working from home. Maybe like there were like some really rare exceptions that would work out, but everyone else just would not work out, you know?
Mm.
So I just basically stopped marketing my VA services, and I said, you know what, like I need to rethink this. You know, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this right, or otherwise I don't want to do it at all, you know? So I kind of went through a period where I just wasn't sure like where I was going with it and what I wanted to do. And eventually I kind of went for a bachelor trip to Colombia, to Barranquilla. Barranquilla has like these carnivals, you know, that they do you know, every year. And I met a friend through a friend there that was, you know, finishing his master's degree. And I told him, hey, look, man, this is what I'm doing, you know. And he was like, all right, cool. But he didn't think nothing of it. But a few days later, he calls me back after I come back. And he's like, hey, man, I'm really interested in what you said about, you know, your company that you're trying to do. So we started talking about it, and he actually initially started working with me kind of part-time as a back end, kind of helping me build it out. And we eventually just went through the whole process of like building an actual company in Colombia, which
Yeah.
I will tell you, if you've never done that before, it's not like here where you can just go on a website and register your company. It's extremely difficult. Like we had to hire lawyers, and you have to go through this whole process, register here, register there, you know. It is not easy. It took months, you know. So that's why I kind of like also like wanted to do it right. All right, let's do this right. So I established the company finally after a few months of going through that process. I signed a lease on an office space, you know, and I started hiring people to come work from the office. So the ones I had over there remote, I had them come to an office, you know, and then as employees, like I started paying them, you know, benefits and pensions.
Mm.
And what I quickly started realizing is that I started finding better talent, you know, because now like I was established, you know, I wasn't
Yeah.
just paying them as contractors. There were people that we interviewed that were really good, but they just kind of never really crossed the bridge to like, you know, work with us. And I felt like it was because we were just not established as an actual entity, you know. So that has kind of been my experience. Now we're like almost ready to like relaunch. I've been working a lot on the back end stuff. But I found that I'm finding better quality of people. The training is so much faster by having them in the office. They're more productive, and I just feel better. You know, I feel like better with the security of people being in office, and they leave the laptops at the office, and I have more control, you know, of things.
Yeah. So talk about your training a little bit, because I know, you know, when we talked previously, you talked pretty in depth about that, about how I think that's unique to your program, where it's very intensive, correct?
Yeah, so that was like the biggest challenge that I had when I started my company. It was the training. My training was very disorganized. So I kind of set out to find a platform that can do what I wanted it to do. I wanted a platform that would allow me to kind of like have courses and allow me to pick those courses and create a unique training course agenda for each specific agency, because not every agency operates the same way. You know, we all have different needs. So why do I need to train my VAs on all the same things as everybody else? You know, there's a lot of things that all the VAs need to know, like the base of insurance and things like that. But there's some other stuff that they don't need to learn because they're not going to do them. So that's why I've built out a learning management system that allows me to do that. So, um, for example, with, you know, our client facing VAs, you know, we basically have an onboarding way for the agency owners to kind of pick out their carriers, the tasks the VA will do. And I also have kind of like a document that shows like the most common calls, like, you know, if someone calls for billing or claims or something like that. Um, so it's all about the onboarding. The onboarding has to
Yeah.
be very detailed, and it's labor intensive for the agency owner and ourselves. Those agencies that kind of give you, oh, you know, these people are trained and they can just get into your agency. No, that's not true.
Right.
It's you have to collaborate with the training. You know, I need you to fill out some things that allows me to tell the VA what their process is going to be for different things. And we don't need to do everything up front. Some things it's as we go, but just giving the agency owners that structure of, you know, how to organize the training, give them that foundation of the structure. I feel like that's an area where a lot of agents like VA companies are missing. And you'll see it on groups. Like people will get on there. I just hired my first VA, but I don't know what is your VA doing? And I just find that fascinating because I'm like, you should know by before you hire, like what you want them to do. So
Yeah.
we're working a lot of technology to kind of like, educate people up front. So by the time the VA starts, we already have a roadmap, what they're going to be trained on and what they're going to do.
Not to mention, it's beneficial for the business owner to be able to see this is what he or she's been trained on.
Exactly.
Here's the in-depth, and from the way that you were explaining to me, it's very detailed. It's very obviously because you're in the business, so I think that gives you an advantage of giving them information that we need to know, whether it's specific
Yep.
to Safeco or specific to mortgage changes or whatever it is, easy links. That's beneficial for the agency owner to know exactly what that VA has been trained on.
Right. So once we create that course, we can add the agency owner as a coach. And what that allows them to see is like you said, the progress of what courses they're taking, kind of where they are in the training progress. What I'm really excited about, which, all of this is, in a test phase, in a beta stage. Um, a lot of agency owners already have stuff on Loom or stuff they have recorded. What I'm trying to encourage agency owners is to send me those training programs. I can add them to their specific agency's training program. I can have either the same VA that's going through the training or someone else watch it, create like 5 or 6 test questions, so that way, when we hire another VA for the agency, we already have the training mapped out for that specific agency. So I really wanted a tool that can allow me to do that. It took me a long time to find one, but I finally found it. And I'm just so excited that, because for us, like the biggest challenge that I see when I onboard agencies as small business owners, we have our process here. It's not really written down. So when you hire people, it really forces you to get organized and you really start finding the inefficiencies within your process.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. You posted recently, just the other day, that because there's many people in these groups that talk about hiring VAs directly, and you said there's many pitfalls to that. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah. So, and I think Jason Cass has done a good job at explaining kind of some of the pitfalls. I think when you have them, one is, let's talk about security, right? Which I think is like the biggest one. When we provide them their own laptop, when they leave that laptop at the office, it's just a lower chance of the data, being compromised. Not saying that if someone works from home, they're going to steal your data. But it's just a higher risk. So, by working from an office, I feel like we have better control of that data, and just peace of mind for everybody, honestly. The second thing is, like, if you don't have them as employees where you're paying them benefits and you're paying them health insurance, and you have like a work environment in a culture, like it's just harder to retain people. When people work from home, not everybody's built for that, So when you really retain and attract top talent by doing it like that. So I think, and then also like the training process. I mean, I've experienced it myself by hiring people remote. I can tell you from experience, it would take me months to get people up and running. Now in 2 weeks, I'm like, how is this person able to do what they're doing in 2 weeks? Because now they have access to like more experienced VAs there that they can ask questions. It's just so much quicker. The learning curve is significantly decreased by them being in an office versus working remote.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about this off air. Let's say that on-hand VAs really takes off, and you have a Foresight Insurance, which is already does very well and takes up a decent chunk of your time. How do you balance your time between running 2 companies?
No, it's and we laughed about it because I said that you and I are very curious how that's going to turn out. No, but I think, like you said, me being able to do this is the biggest testament that this works. My agency is my lab, is where I'm able to test and implement to see that things work. So how I'm going to balance it is the same way I've been able to like delegate myself out of my position of a producer. I think it's all about time blocking, being consistent with my delegation, just really trusting people, training people right, and trusting them. It's a very difficult process to go through because it's not overnight. Everything is so slow. But my key is to be able to just time block, set certain times for certain meetings for each company, um, and kind of flow depending on where the need is. But the cool thing is like because the verticals are so connected, a lot of things that I'm doing on on-hand VAs has helped Foresight and vice versa. So it really helps that it's not something completely different because
Yeah.
some of the labor also helps both entities.
Yeah. Yeah. Last question for you. We all want to improve something in our agencies. We're constantly trying to get better. Um, what what would you like to see Foresight Insurance get better at over the course of the next year?
Um, Man, I actually just signed up for Mariah Gates
Okay,
program with
I saw that.
Agency Zoom. So I feel like that's an area where we just don't have a really good process for following up with the quotes that we do, X dating, to maximize. And I think a lot of that is going to be accomplished through Agency Zoom. So I feel like that's the biggest challenge that we have right now. We have a lot of leads. We've been quoting a lot, but sometimes my team is so busy quoting.
Mhm.
When I go and check on leads, I see they've only called them once. And I'm like, it's so frustrating because I know how hard it is to find quality leads.
Yeah,
But I understand also, I mean, they're just trying to do the best they can. I mean, last month, my team generated 200 opportunities. Um, and I just basically just have two main producers that are handling those opportunities. And sometimes I get into the rotation. Um, but I'm also going to get my licensed CSRs to get into that rotation because I've been able to basically put all of my VAs on the phone calls on the first phone call. So what I found by that is that now they're doing like 80% of the stuff that's coming in. And now my licensed CSRs have the time to cross sell and sell opportunities. So now we're just trying to like get organized so like that my licensed CSRs also sell. Because I what I tell them is like, hey, look, you're not doing nothing different. You're already working on rewrites, you're already
yeah,
working on policy
correct.
increases. Trust me, like you already got this. You already have the knowledge. You're not doing anything different. And guess what? Now you're gonna make more money because I'm paying commission, and now the agency makes more money. So it's a huge win-win. So that's kind of like the biggest challenge that we've had, and that's kind of where we're heading to really maximize all of our licensed staff to really contribute to the bottom line.
Yeah, I think that's a great move. I've been following her for a while too. She's going to get you dialed in, and get you really, really on
I,
a good
I
system.
feel like sometimes we look at that big price tag and we get scared, but guess what? Like that's your time. You're gonna really invest hours of your time trying to figure out how all of that works when you can just pay somebody to build it out for you. They already worked out all the kinks out of it. They already have all the
Yeah,
templates. You can jump on those calls. So I think it's a very smart move of her to do that. And honestly, I'm really impressed with everything she's doing. I don't know her personally. I haven't
yeah,
even talked to her.
yeah.
Um, but I feel like it's worth it. And people should really invest in just hiring professionals that are good at what they do, stop cutting corners, and focus on what you do, which is selling and servicing.
Yeah. Yeah, she's very sharp. I don't know her personally either. I'm trying to get her on the podcast. She's very busy. She's running two businesses too, and one's really taken off. So yeah, it's a great move. Well, how are you attracting all these leads?
Um, Man, it's just been a combination of things, like from the Liberty days, they really taught me how to, build relationships with realtors and lenders. So from day one, that's kind of what we've been focusing on, attending meetings, just reaching out to lenders, connecting on Facebook. So I already have like a list of people that I have. And then when I brought my sales producers, I've also like connected them with some of my own leads source, but they also like now generated their own source, which is really cool.
Yeah,
So we focus on that. We also focus on like Google reviews. Like if you go to my
yeah,
website, we don't have like amazing, like we're not really crushing the review
yeah,
game like Steven Turnbull and Sean and Mike Sharp. I feel like other agents are doing a lot better than me in that area.
yeah,
So we need to step our game up. But we have about 70 5-star reviews, but also like we have a lot of pictures in our website and in my Google page. So I really think that agency owners should have pictures of them and their staff because when people are searching, they can just relate better versus like having stock images or not having any images at all. So we have like a marketing wheel, referral sources,
yeah.
online leads. Erie gives us Erie online leads. Erie
Okay.
has a mailer program that we've been doing for a long time that has now working better than ever because of the rate increases. Um, and we're also like training our VAs, which I feel like I didn't even mention. Like it has been a game changer. to find opportunities. So every time someone
Mm,
calls, and if you get a lot of real like referrals from realtors, you're bound to write a lot of monoline business. Unfortunately,
yeah.
it's very difficult to cross sell up front. Sometimes some people do it better than others.
Yeah.
So now my VAs, when they're handling whatever they're handling, mortgage change, billing question, hey, Mr. Client, before I let you go, I'm looking at reviewing your account. I noticed that we have your home, but not your auto. I just want to make you aware you're missing one of the biggest discounts that we can offer. We would love to, give you an opportunity to review what you have and see if we can find you something better and lower your costs on the home insurance. And you'll be surprised. A lot of people, even if 20-30% say yes initially, a lot of people later come back when their agent messes up, when their rate increases. Hey, I'm ready now to get that auto
Yeah.
insurance. And I'm sorry to keep, rambling, but
No, it's great.
now we just added Risk Advisor and Canopy Connect. So now, like, we just turbocharged the whole
Yeah.
gathering information process, where especially Canopy Connect has really blown my mind how much data it gives you, the claims, the prior policies. So, it's even good for new business and cross sales. So
Yeah.
I'm just really excited for, this year for us. Um, the exciting part of all of this is that we still have a lot to learn. Even though we're doing well, there's always room for growth. And I think that's the exciting thing that we agency owners need to realize. We're living the dream. I mentioned in the podcast that I really wasn't in love with the industry, and I think it was unfair for me to say that, because I feel like the industry has been really, really good for me, and it has given me the opportunity to grow personally, grow professionally. And I think if we look at it from that lens, like, hey, you
Yeah.
have a very unique opportunity. You live in the best country in the world that allows you to build something. Like, do it. Like, we have all the tools that we need. If you really realize, if you go outside of the US, how much opportunity we have. So I think when you really look at it from that lens, I think we work from a place of gratitude, and we can achieve amazing things within our agency.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand what you're saying though. Um, it's the, uh, it's the excitement and opportunity of building something. It's not necessarily you don't have to be in love with insurance per se, but you're building something. You're building a company. That's what inspires me.
And I think I've come to realize, like, we are really in a noble industry. I
Yeah.
think it becomes frustrating because people, you're fighting against billions of dollars of marketing about saving money. Um, but it's more than that. So we're fighting against that. But I think it's a really noble industry because we're really having valuable conversations, and we're trying to educate. Like, if you go to Geico, they'll say you the lowest limits. They don't care. But like,
Yeah.
if you look at the stuff we argue about, oh, I'm not selling lower than 100, 300. And the reason we do that is because we care. Like,
Yeah.
we don't want to be that agent that our client, because our clients are our friends and we build relationships. We don't want to be that agent that they call us and they say, oh, why didn't you offer me this coverage? So we never want to be in that position. So I think we're really adding value to society. We really
100%.
are.
100%. And that's part of being a professional. Our job is a risk advisor to protect protect your family, your business, or whatever it is. And it's not, yeah, let's try and save you $20. I mean, it's exactly what it is. It is a noble profession.
And as an industry, I feel like we need to do a better job at selling this to our staff and to new people.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very difficult. Yes, people now, like, more than ever, are extremely rude and ungrateful sometimes for
Yeah.
the work that we do. But guess what? Like, sometimes in life, you got to do what you got to do for the best, and because it's the right thing to do. And don't worry about what people do or say. Like, just do it. You pick up the trash even if someone is not looking. It's one of those things where I feel like we need to instill that in our staff and future generations. It's like, we're in an amazing industry. It's very difficult, but it's also very rewarding, and we need to do a better job at recruiting more talent into our industry.
Yeah, I was just explaining this to one of my staff members the other day of, we had unfortunately, lost what I would consider as a good customer, and we lost them over price, and it was one that we all know we've served extremely well. I've advised extremely well. And to lose them over, I don't even know what it was. Maybe it was $200. But as I've explained, I said we can only do what we can do. We can do the right thing, and we can serve people well. And if they leave, they leave. But all we can do is control what we can control on our end, and treat people professionally and protect them as best we can.
I feel like that's why this industry is one of the best, like personal development programs that anyone can go through, even working as a CSR or as a producer, because you really learn like the psychology and the nature of people. Some people will, some people won't.
Yeah.
But so what? Just do it.
It's
It
not
is,
personal.
and it's not personal, and it's very difficult. I get it, because you're right. Like there have been customers where we go the extra mile, and I'm telling them, like, we don't have to do this. Like, we're doing it because we want to make sure we do right by you, and that customer still leaves, and it's just heart wrenching. But just rinsing yourself and not letting the highs get too high or the lows get too low, and understand, like, you have to go through the process. And then, but then you have customers that like will just rave about you. Oh my God, like, you guys are so amazing. And then it's all worth it again.
Yeah. And this one that I'm thinking one has been raving about us for years. We insure our whole family. That's why, some of us even struggled with it. It was like, well, that's just how it is. They're going to be price sensitive, and there's nothing we can do about that. If that's the case, then she's going to jump around every 2 years. And
it's sometimes with insurance, it's a not yet, right? I think, like, just don't burn the bridge and leave the doors open, because people come back,
right.
and we're experiencing that right now more than ever with this environment.
Yeah. Hey, Michael, I want to respect your time. Appreciate the conversation. I enjoyed it. I knew that I would, especially here at the end when we're just kind of riffing a little bit back and forth. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with Michael Cruz?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. Michael Cruz, Cruz. Also, both of my emails are michael.cruz@foresighti.com or michael.cruz@onhandvas.com.
And if someone wants to check out your VA services, I think they absolutely should, because I think you're doing something unique and probably special in this line of work. What's the best way to reach out to you, find out more about on-hand VAs?
It all starts on our website. So if they can just go to www.onhandvas.com, and they'll be able to schedule a time to talk to me. Eventually, we're going to have a better funnel that's going to give you all the information you need to learn about us, and before we even talk, because my goal is to give all the information up front to our agency owners to really make an educated decision if we're the right fit for them or not.
Okay. Yeah. Outstanding. All right, sir. Thank you again for doing this. I appreciate it. Everyone else, thank you for listening to another episode of the Agent Owners Podcast. We'll see you next week.